Hey guys, it's 123 Baseball coming back for week two, a post week one recap, and looking forward to some games and some good matchups for this upcoming week. Even some midweek games that happened last night with a lot of mid-major surprises in my eyes. We had a good first week in college baseball, I believe. Had quite a bit of upsets and some teams not really showing up how we thought they would. Gavin, do you have any teams in particular that kind of let you down week one?
I would say it could have been a rough weekend for the Arizona Wildcats. Now, granted, they played some pretty good teams down there, but the pitching just kind of fell apart on them, and then the offense never really got going. I will say their shortstop, he's exciting. He's an exciting player. He's got a wiffle ball bat swing. It's what it looks like when he gets one. So, no, it's a long season. Your year's not over after week one. You're not going to Omaha after week one, and your season's not over after week one either. So I think you take everything with a grain of salt. Some teams, figure it out later on in the season. But it feels good to start that runway off good. Just get a couple wins under your belt, so you see what it's like to go through the victory line at the end of a good game. So no, I'm not overreacting to anything thus far though. So
What about the Duke Blue Devils? I'm gonna be honest with you. You can't be a top 15 ranked team in the country, and Cincinnati They came in and they embarrassed Duke especially on Sunday. What was it 15-5, 19-5, something like that? I think it was 19-5 Sunday. That you can't let that happen, especially at home. Granted, I do believe that Duke doesn't have much of a home field advantage when it comes to baseball. They need to stay over there at Durham. I don't know. Did their like thing run out with the Durham Bulls, or they just can't play there right now? I don't know.
I mean, they
But
lost out on a regional host last year because they don't have a bathroom in the dugout. There's a porta potty behind the dugout, and you're in the ACC. But I digress.
well, I think Cincinnati's baseball field might be better than Duke's home field, in my opinion. I mean, I've never seen Cincinnati's baseball field, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it probably is. I mean, that's just an embarrassing show from Duke. I was kind of let down by their performance all weekend. I mean, and then you got teams like Tennessee, though. Granted, you're playing Hofstra, but when you outscore a Division One baseball team 43-2 in a weekend series and only have to play 21 innings, I mean that's pretty impressive. And then you win Tuesday 29-4.
Just taking teams to the woodshed.
I mean, they've scored
the defending national champion.
they've scored 72 runs 72 runs in 4 games. That's impressive, regardless of who it is.
I think, the offense obviously has been lights out for Tony V and the boys, but a big thing for me was Liam Doyle in game one. Kid that we saw freshman year at Coastal. You could tell that there was something there. DeVilo was, not as high as it was. I think he was averaging 96 miles an hour on the heater. It was big time ride up in the zone, big time compete. Transfers out after 1 year at Coastal, goes to Ole Miss. It doesn't really click. DeVilo's kind of down. He doesn't really take the steps they want to. Transfers for a second time to Tennessee, and Frank Anderson does it again, and he was electric, holding it down for the Volunteers on that Friday night. So that was good to see.
Yeah, I mean, Tony V's gonna always find a way. Him and Frank Anderson have got something amazing that they're building there in Knoxville, and they're going to be a perennial powerhouse as long as they're there. And I think Tony V's there for 20 more years. I think he loves Tennessee as a place more than he does their baseball program. That guy is everywhere in Knoxville, and I think the fans love him. I think the players love him. I think everybody loves him. Umpires, maybe not so much, but
Well,
I mean, nobody likes no good coach is liked by umpires.
no, and no good coach should like umpires.
I mean, especially in college baseball, umpires are the epitome of brutal 95% of the time, especially when you get into these. I think last year the Sun Belt umpires were 73% correct call rate on strikes and balls. That is abysmally bad. I mean, they get 3 out of every 4 right. I mean, you can't have that. Like that's
Yeah.
really bad. And it gets better when you get up in the SEC, ACC, obviously, but
It's bad at every listen. Everybody expecting perfect. I mean, watching the big league games, every time they miss one call, everybody freaks out. But I mean, and that's why maybe we see the automated strike zone come into the game eventually. I'm not a huge fan of the automatic strike zone every call, but the challenge system I think is something that in a moment it could be good if it's just something egregious, and if you're around it enough, and by enough I mean if you go to one game, you'll probably see something egregious. I'm not the biggest fan of the strike zones day in and day out in the college game, but you got to get up there and compete. As long as it's consistently bad, I think you can adjust. If we're all over the place, the high strike the first 3 innings, and then the high strike's not a strike anymore, and then now we're calling the low strike after we weren't the first 3 innings. It's something like that's what really gets annoying. But yeah, so I don't mind the challenge system if that's something that comes down to shoot.
well, I think they announced this morning or yesterday, that they're using it in spring training this year for major league players. I think last year the stat was 51% of challenged ball strikes were overturned. So it's a 50-50. But I mean, if you think about it that way, I'm not a big statistics guy, but if you get the call right the first time and then you can challenge it and it's overturned 50%, or if it's called a ball and then it's overturned 50%, I think the number might be bigger than that or lower. Don't really know. Not a big stats guy there. But when you have a 50-50 chance the first time and then you over challenge it and it's still a 50-50 chance, I don't know what the correct call rate is there for that statistically wise. I don't know. But I digress on that on that. But let's get into some of these midweek games. A lot of big midweek matchups yesterday and today, even though a lot of them got canceled, a bunch of snow everywhere. But NC State loses to Liberty. You got anything to talk about that debacle over there in Raleigh?
Well, they went to their guy, their guy in the end, absolute electric arm there at the end of games for them and Jacob Duden. I mean, it's big time stuff. Command, maybe not so much. Not so much. I mean, there was some walks, HBPs. Errors never help, but it's you go into the bottom of the your half of the ninth, and you're up 3, and you're probably expecting to walk out of there with a win. But 4 unearned runs kind of unravels it for NC State there against Liberty. Probably not what Coach Avant was looking for there out of Duden to start the year, but like I said, tip your hat and go get them next week. Try again.
Speaking of unearned runs, that Auburn-Troy game yesterday was something. Both ways. I mean, I'm a Troy homer through and through. It was a tough game for me to watch. But you give up 4 unearned. Troy gives up 4 unearned in the first. And then in the top half of the second, Auburn turns around. The right fielder drops a pop fly. 3 runs score off of that. And that's an out. And then that turned into 2 more runs being scored with 2 outs, which wouldn't have scored if you make that catch prior in the inning. And then it just unraveled. I mean, that's 8, 9 unearned runs in a frame of an inning. That's just the final score is 7-6. So over 70% of those runs scored in that game were unearned. It's just Troy's got to find a way to play on defense. I think it's every year. Regional 2 years ago, you lose a regional winners bracket game on an error, and then I think it's just every year it's just a big time moment for Troy. It always slips through their fingers, and it's not like they're getting beat. I don't think they've really ever gotten beat. They just end up beating themselves, and I think that's something Skylar Mead's got to talk with his teammates about. And there's only so much you can do as a coach in that situation. I mean, you have those guys practice day in and day out. And you go into practices. I mean, I was there for 4 years. You have some of the best infield, outfield defense days that I've ever seen. And then you turn around 2 days later in a weekend series, and it's just like, dude, what the hell are you doing out there? Like, you can only do so much. I mean, granted, you're dealing with college kids, and I was a college kid myself. You're pretty stupid, I'm gonna say, and you'd like to do everything that you do is what you want to do, I think, and no one's ever gonna tell you that you're doing anything wrong, and you're gonna 100% agree. And so I think it's just one of those things that Troy's got to get over the hump with, and I think they have the talent to do it 1,000%. I think they're very talented. They're top 25 for a reason. I just think they got to get the big game moments. I think they just got to be able to come through and make all the plays they need to.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to see that for that kid in center field. I mean, you go down and to a knee with the glove on the ground and everything, and you think you squared it up, being as safe as you can, and the ball still squirts through. And at that point, the game's probably over. You put the next two runners on to give you a chance, loading the bases with a force at the plate, just give you one extra opportunity to get an out, and you bring up Auburn's best player. And he made you pay. He did. You can make the case at points in that game that maybe Troy is the better team. I certainly, I mean, with it being that way and the way that they've played bigger teams like that in the past, they're certainly deserve to be on the field with a team like that. There's no doubt about it. It's just some little things just come back to bite you, and it's razor thin margins sometimes, and you're giving up 400 runs. It's hard to overcome that at times. But yeah, no, I mean, you like to see them compete, throughout that game going into the SEC field. They're not going to be scared. They've been there before. When beat Georgia Tech, beat Auburn before. Alabama had them dead to rights in the regional. So that program's certainly not afraid of facing teams with a bigger brand name than them. And I just think, they got Mississippi State coming up soon, and they'll get another crack at it. And that could probably roll us into, maybe they didn't have the night they were looking for last night.
Yeah, Mississippi State travels to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. That's a hell of a place. I mean, that fan base is unbelievable, and they striped out the stadium last night there. I mean, you don't really see that much in baseball games. I mean, that's more of a basketball, football kind of thing. But I mean, those fans are extremely dedicated to what they do over there in Hattiesburg, and yeah, they shut out Mississippi State. I think allowed 4 hits last night. And I mean, the pitching at Southern Miss is always going to be dominant, and that's a program that no matter who they play, they make every routine play that they need to make, even ones they're not supposed to make. They somehow just find a way to get it done. And I mean, I'm very impressed with what Ostrander has done down there in Hattiesburg. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a big win at home against Mississippi State. And they'll have Ole Miss on the schedule midweek, Alabama too. I think they're going to play all of them well. I think they have a really good chance to win both of those games too.
Yeah, Joey Urban, 3 for 3 for them last night. I mean, transfer, we talked about him last week. Colby Allen on the mound, thought maybe he'd be a weekend guy. I mean, 4 scoreless, hitless innings, 1 walk, 5 Ks. Mix and match a couple different bullpen guys. Josh Ock, whose brother played at Southern Miss, actually. I remember him coming in against Florida State one time, and he came and threw like 90 pitches out of the bullpen, scoreless, like 4 innings, and it was like he threw 1 off-speed pitch. It was heater. So, good bloodlines there. Southern Miss, yeah, I mean, it's a big state for baseball in Mississippi all the way around. They take that stuff seriously, playing the in-state schools there. They feel like they belong. And in baseball, they certainly do.
Speaking of teams that think they belong, Dallas Baptist University had a tough game yesterday against UT Rio Grande Valley. They come out of there, they lose 15-5. That's your boys over there in Dallas, Callaway. What you got on that?
They had a good weekend. We could start there if we're going to do that. First, North Dakota State. They win 3 there, and then come into that into the midweek, and maybe playing a little smaller team, and you kind of go bebop through it. You keep them in it, and then they just explode for 11 runs in the ninth inning. You're up one, and then you give up 11 to lose it. Which, hey, we've been there. What was that? 2022 Arc State going into the inning winning. Think you're going to have a happy bus ride on the way back, and then bam, you give up 11. You get run ruled. It's not a happy bus ride home.
Hey, we still got pizza though.
We did.
It was already ordered. It was way
before.
colder than it should have been, though. I'll tell you that. We were out there for a little too long.
Yeah, that inning, man, I think we ran through every arm we had left. Were you in that?
I was warming up on the mound when the pass ball went by for the run rolling run there. Yeah, I was close. I think I was one batter away. The classic. Be ready for the next guy.
Right.
That turns into four more guys. But yeah, no, I wasn't involved in that.
Not one of our brightest moments there, but I'm not worried with midweek games. Giving up 11 in the ninth to lose it is certainly not something to be proud of. But no, I'm not worried about DBU at all.
What about Wake Forest? They seem to always just have a problem with UNCG and midweek games.
Hey, UNCG, good lineage. They've had good coaches in the past. I mean, after the weekend they had just runs on runs. Merrick Houston had an absolute massive weekend. I think he hit over 700. I think he's probably the best shortstop in the country. Tools wise, I mean, he's taken a big jump from last year. This year, it seems offensively. But yeah, hey, UNCG, scrappy ball club. You got to go on the road, and they shut them out. Props to them. A lot for these midweek teams. Maybe the RPI factor, especially depending on what league you're in. Obviously, in the Sun Belt, it's not that big of an issue because there's a lot of postseason caliber teams. But some of these smaller conferences. These teams, these midweeks against Power Fives or Power Fours are big for the RPI at the end of the year, sneaking in the tournament, even just playing these games. So props to all these schools for signing up to play these, and then that's why you play the games, right? If you roll it out there, you got a chance to win, and that's what happened for UNCG.
Yeah, that's one thing with mid majors going on the road, especially. Especially if you go on the road and get a victory. I mean, I know 2 years ago we went on the road at Auburn and we beat them there. And I think that at the end of the year, that was the committee looked at that win because we were a last four in team. And I think the committee looked at that win and it's just like, I mean, they can go on the road and they can beat an SEC team who is hosting a regional and they can go into their place. And Southern Miss went into that regional and won that regional at Auburn. So I think it's one of those things where it's like the committee sees it and it helps your RPI out tremendously. I mean, especially just even playing some of those games on the road, those mid-major teams' RPIs go up, not even winning games, depending on whatever they're ranked at. So, yeah, I think it's a big help for those mid-major programs. And I think they might they're always trying, obviously, but I think that it means a little bit more for them. Just say like the Florida Gators last season, they go 30-28 in the regular season, 30-27, something
like that,
horrible,
yeah.
and you make the tournament, you make Omaha. I don't think Florida in a midweek game. I don't think they won more than half their midweek games last year. I mean, against subpar opponents for Florida standards. So I mean, when you're in the SEC and ACC and Big 12 even. Those midweek games don't really hold as much weight as when you play 8 of your 10 weekend series are against top 30 RPI teams. So I think it means a lot more for these mid majors, especially. I mean, even like Texas State yesterday went on the road, kind of on the road. They played in Arlington again against Oklahoma State, and they came away with a 4-2 victory there. I mean, that's a big win for the Sun Belt and Texas State. UCSB Santa Barbara lost to St. Mary's last night also. So, I mean, those West Coast teams are always extremely scrappy. You don't really know what you're going to get out there. But, yeah, I mean, you had a lot of big upsets yesterday, and I think it's going to lead to a good season for most of these programs. Get them a little bit of moving weight, a little bit of momentum heading into the weekend series, and on.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the goal every year is to get to 40 before the postseason starts, and the only way to do that is to win midweek games, especially for these mid-major teams. I mean, you've got to rack up some wins there for the RPI perspective. Obviously, in those bigger leagues, there's a little more leeway with how many wins you're going to get, but the goal should be 40 every year. You're pretty much locked in there as a mid-major or a Power Five, obviously with a little more leeway from the Power Five perspective. But yeah, midweek games are important. I know it does seem like Florida doesn't. I don't want to say take midweek games seriously, but they've struggled in past years with just beating inferior, talented teams on the midweek. I don't know if it's an arm depth issue, which Florida's always had arms. Last year, especially, though, I think it was just a depth issue on the mound. They were pretty thin, and it kind of clicked a little bit for them at the end. And they ended up making a run, but it was a struggle, and it was a struggle because they couldn't win midweek games all year long. So yeah, I mean, they're important. How important, each individual school seems to stress them. I can't speak to it, but for my money, they're pretty important, and for mid-major teams, it gives them an opportunity to boost that RPI big time, like you said.
Speaking of RPI, top 5 team in RPI right now, the Michigan Wolverines. Huge weekend for them. I can't believe that I didn't get to go to Puerto Rico to play a baseball tournament. I mean, that sounds like a fantastic place to go spend a weekend. Especially, I mean, it's 43 degrees outside right now in southern Alabama. And that's crazy. It's like 80 in Puerto Rico. That sounds fantastic to me. I mean, and you go down there, you beat number 2 team in the country, Virginia. You beat Rice. You beat Villanova 19-0, and then you come away in the championship game against a very good Stetson team, 6-1. I mean, it's just an impressive weekend. They're going to have even more to prove this weekend. They got a tough little round robin in Texas this weekend. But I mean, Jonathan Kim this week through 4 games is 9 of 18, an 11-11 OPS. Mitch Voigt 8 for 17, 4 doubles, 2 homers. You got 2 starters that come out, Kurt Barr and David Lally, combined for 10 innings, 11 punch-outs, only 6 hits, no earned. And then you have Gavin DeVoot. Hope I'm not butchering that name. He came in and closed Friday night's game, 2 1/3 scoreless, and then turns around and starts Monday against Stetson at 8 a.m. in the morning, which is that's terrible. Went 5 scoreless. I mean, that's a huge weekend for him. Especially in an opening weekend when you got to pitch twice, let alone 7 1/3 in those 2 outings. I mean, it's just a huge, impressive weekend for Michigan, and I think they're going to be a really tough program, and they might be the team to beat in the Big Ten this year.
They might be. I mean, they go out there opening day, and granted, it's opening day. Virginia doesn't have their number 1. Blanco was out for them, but I mean, Woolfolk's been around the league a while. I mean, that's a veteran, good stuff arm, and they go out there and they beat them. They stared Virginia in the face, game number 1, and beat them, and they didn't let the high of that affect them the rest of the weekend in a negative manner. Think like, oh, we did it, we beat Virginia. They bared down and ended up winning out the rest of the weekend. Like I said, the Big Ten seems to be a kind of a crapshoot sometimes, and maybe Michigan, for the first time since Bakich left, might be the cream of the crop in the Big Ten.
Well, speaking of Big Ten, I mean, Indiana didn't have the most impressive weekend either. I mean, they didn't really show up to play this weekend, I think, and I think they might have just left the door open. If that's a season-long issue for the Hoosiers, I don't know if it is or not, but it very well could be. It is opening weekend, obviously, but I mean, Big Ten could be Michigan's for the taking. We could be seeing a nice little World Series Finals run from the Wolverines here again.
Well, we've seen it before. They beat some good teams. They had some good players on there. A couple good arms. Trust me, I saw it. Florida State was in it. We got shut out. CG shut out by Tommy Henry. Really, really competitive college arm there. Actually, I think he's in the big leagues with the Diamondbacks right
Really?
now. Tommy Henry. Yeah, I think he had a little velo, and I think he's in the big league with the Diamondbacks. But no, Michigan was impressive. Indiana 0-4. Can't go 0-4. Winless is tough on opening weekend. And that's, when you got to get with your guys in the locker room. And I mean, you can't fall apart after 0-4. That's the thing, is you can't let it really snowball, because they got a good team up there. I mean, they got a projected first round pick. Devin Taylor, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean,
Devlin, some Taylor. Yeah.
Taylor. Yeah, I know. Y'all went up there, and Troy played at Indiana
Last season, I'll
last
tell you
year.
what, that guy, Luke Lyon, started his first ever Division One start for the Troy Trojans. First batter of the game, Mr. Taylor. I think he might have hit that ball 485 feet down the right field line. Like it cleared three separate fences.
And that would be the second farthest ball hit that weekend.
Shane Lewis did hit a ball. I think
I
it was
think
clocked
he
at
hit
484.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I mean the ball was
actually
flying.
clocked at 484, which is insane.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Ended up coming away with a series victory there. Big series for the Trojans last season, for a tough stretch there. I mean, you play at Alabama, then you go on the road, drive 10 hours to a frigid Indiana, and then you turn right around and play Auburn. I mean, that's what you got to do. I mean, that's what Troy's doing this year. I mean, you play. Maybe the weekend series is not so tough. I mean, you got Northwestern State this weekend, then you turn around, you go on the road, and you play at Mississippi State, and then turn around the next day, you play at UAB, and then you come home for that weekend series, and then you turn around and you go to Tuscaloosa the next Tuesday. I mean that's a tough stretch. We're going to see what the Trojans are really about there. But speaking of Michigan, I mean they're in a loaded field this weekend in Arlington, Texas. It's Michigan, TCU, Arkansas, and Kansas State. That's going to be a big test for Michigan. I mean, we're going to really see what they're. I mean, they played Virginia, the number 2 team in the country, and they came away with a victory there. But I mean, you're playing in the states. You got a ranked team in Arkansas. Kansas State struggling a little bit. They've got a tough first stretch of the season. Cal, I'm going to tell you, Kansas State's starting stretch of games they have to play.
All right, spit it.
This past weekend, they played Washington, Coastal, St. Joseph's is their one win. They won 12-7 Sunday. And then they turn around and play Coastal again on Monday. They played UNC last night. That's 5 games in 5 days. Granted, that's tough for anybody. Their opening game Friday night's against Arkansas. Saturday, they play Michigan. Sunday, they play TCU. They turn around the next weekend. They play LSU, Sam Houston State, and Nebraska, and then go back home and play Creighton.
That's a stretch. Hey, like we said, RPI. You don't have to win them all, but playing them certainly helps. And then you get into the rigors of the Big 12 schedule.
Which the Big 12 schedule this season without Oklahoma and Texas isn't too tough. I mean, you got to play Baylor and you got to play Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. But other than that, I mean, you play UCF and you play who hasn't been a perennial powerhouse by any means. You have Cincinnati in there. I mean, they had a big weekend ranked now against Duke. But I mean, the Big 12 is not the same competitive environment that it used to be by any means. I mean, Texas Tech has kind of fallen off a little bit too, in my opinion, from what they used to be. I mean, that was a perennial Omaha team. Like they were in Omaha every year. And I don't know what's happening over there in Lubbock, but I mean, I think the wheels kind of falling off the rails there a little bit.
Wow. Out on Tim Tadlock, huh?
I'm not completely out on him, but I mean, you gotta show me something. You gotta show me something.
Yeah. I mean, they've had a rough couple of years. I mean, that was probably, I think 11's last year is when they were in Omaha. They put Florida State out. That was probably the last really good Texas Tech team they had. They were on a run there for a while.
Those Jung brothers kind of carried them a little bit.
Say again?
The Jung brothers kind of carried them there for a little bit.
Yeah, they had both brothers. But no, they had a rough weekend. I mean, granted, that you go and play on the road at number 6 North Carolina. Now they did do one thing good. North Carolina didn't hit a home run, so they did not hit a home run, but they pitched it well and they played the game well in other facets. So that might be, I don't want to say a little, maybe a little concerning. North Carolina's played 4 games and still hasn't hit a home run. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying that's not going to be what it looks like the rest of the year, but
It
no, I mean
is
that
30 degrees outside too. To be fair, I mean, the
maybe that
ball's
was,
hit to the
but
warning track. Get out in 65-degree weather.
maybe the wind was blowing in.
Yeah, maybe we didn't have boots on the ground. We're not
No,
100
no.
percent sure what happened over there, but I mean that's a big weekend from UNC too. I mean you sweep Texas Tech at home. I mean that was a big weekend for um, opening weekend. Just having a Big 12 team with the pedigree that Texas Tech has coming into your place. I mean you sweep them at home. I mean granted you don't hit a home run, but you win 3 games. I mean I'll take 3 wins over two
You'll take
wins
it.
and a
You'll take
homer
it.
any day of the week, but.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, UNC's got a tough weekend this weekend too against another perennial powerhouse in ECU, who has had a tough stretch of games. I mean, you lose to Campbell last night. Campbell, not by any means a pushover. I mean, that's a good program, but I mean, you got to come away in the opening weekend and you kind of just scratch and claw your way through against kind of a inferior team, in my opinion. I mean, what do you got on ECU?
Yeah, probably not a banner weekend. Not what they were looking for. They scrapped their way to 2 close wins. Losing the first game of the year is obviously never fun. I will say they did have a doubleheader opening day. They split that. What are the statistics? Something like 75% of the time you split a doubleheader. It's tough. It's tough playing 2 games, especially when you're not necessarily in game shape. I mean, obviously you're playing scrimmages and stuff leading up, but playing 18 innings off rip is certainly a little more difficult than just one game
You can't
to get it
stretch
going.
guys either. Like I mean, especially like opening weekend. I'm very surprised that Gavin DeVoot threw 7 1/3 across 2 appearances in an opening weekend. Like that's very you rarely ever see that. I mean, even small schools that only have a couple arms, I mean, you still haven't built up most of these guys, if any of them, into long standing outings. And in double headers early in the season, you can't throw a bullpen guy out there for 4 or 5 innings. I mean, he just can't. He's not doesn't have the stamina built up enough for it. Even when it's 35 degrees outside, too. I mean, it's tough, especially opening night. It's not an ideal situation by any means, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right, 100%. Keeping the guys. I mean, what are you 75 pitches maybe? But then it's like, how stressful are they? And that's something that like throwing pitches is something, but how stressful are they? Because 50 stressful pitches versus 75 unstressful pitches. I mean, the wear and tear on the arm and the body and everything that goes into that is it's different. It's different. So I think you need to keep track of how many of those pitches are actually stressful when it comes to keeping count than just pure pitch count. But you're right. Everybody's shortened up. I've never liked playing 4 games opening weekend. I've never understood the scheduling of that. This is when your arms are the least ready to go. Everybody's on pitch counts. So a lot of teams I know do end up playing 4 games opening weekend. And hey, some of these teams, maybe they want to use all their arms. And so they do that for that perspective, but especially mid majors. We played 4 games opening weekend quite a bit. And it just seemed like you kind of run out of arms with everybody being on pitch counts. So yeah, that's always something that I've thought was interesting with the scheduling. But yeah, ECU. I mean, we'll see what it looks like the rest of the way. Like you said, tough test with North Carolina, who can really pitch it. I mean, they've got some serious arms up there. They're gonna, for my money, they'll be make another Omaha push this year. So it'll be a good test to see after that tough weekend, and then also the midweek loss.
Speaking of some pretty good arms, you got Arkansas. I mean, opening up a tough, gritty Friday day win against Washington State. I mean, Washington State had that game, in my opinion. I mean, I think they should have came away with a victory there. But I mean, Washington State relievers come in and you walk the house, make some errors. I don't think Arkansas recorded a hit and hit a walk off sac fly, I believe, or I think it was a walk off sac fly. I mean, Arkansas has always had that little tough. They just never find a way to just put it to teams, and I think they always rely on their pitching a little too much, and the bats really just never are there. And I mean, I just don't really think that the lineup for Arkansas is going to be able to get it done for them deep in SEC play, in my opinion. I mean, you pitchers can get you so far, but I mean, you have one bad outing, and then that's a game. That's a game there, and you go down 4, 5, 6 runs with a lineup that can't manufacture its own runs without errors. I mean, you play good, tough teams in the SEC who aren't going to walk you, who aren't going to make dumb mistakes in the infield and the outfield. It's going to be tough for Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we saw it last year. The offense just never really rounded into form for them, and what that does, even if you have maybe the best pitcher in college baseball last year in Hagen Smith, is the margin for error is so thin. So he in that regional, and he makes one mistake pitch to Kalen Culpepper, hits a 3-run homer, and the game's over. So you would like to see a little more offensively for Arkansas. It's been a struggle for them. I'm not sure why. Some of those earlier Arkansas teams, with Heston Kjerstad, those teams kind of mashed, and they've seen to kind of gotten away from that. Now the pitching has certainly picked up the slack. I mean, Gabe Gackle is absolutely electric. Was really good for them out of the bullpen as a freshman last year, and has taken over the Friday role from Hagen Smith, who was about as good as any left-hander and any pitcher in general in college baseball last year. But Arkansas is going to roll out there with Will McIntyre. I feel like he's been there for about 12 years. He still seems to be the guy. He's not the biggest stuff guy, and they're just going to throw him out there in all the biggest moments that they play. But no, Arkansas is going to pitch it. That's for sure. It's just, do they get the offense going at any kind of consistency when it comes down to it, getting into conference play, like you said? I'm not really sure. I mean, they did have two run wall wins over the weekend against Washington State. Not sure how good the Cougs are this season, but we'll see when they start to face some tougher arms. I mean, like you said, you already mentioned the tournament this weekend, Kansas State, TCU, Michigan. So they'll see something a little more there, and we'll see what the Razorbacks do with it.
Speaking of the pitching, Vandy Sawyer Hawks. I mean, that guy is electric. I mean, this inning or against GCU this past weekend, 3 innings, 2 hits, 5 Ks. I mean, the slider was absolutely disgusting. Fastball had some good life, good ride to it. I mean, GCU couldn't do anything with it. You got RJ Austin. That guy's playing unbelievable right now. He's hitting 391, 1114 OPS, a double, triple, and a home run for the nice little weekend series cycle there. And then Rustin Rigdon's hitting 467 with the 1200 OPS. Did walk 3 times and hit by 2 pitches. Love me some HBPs, by the way. Also had 2 doubles there. I mean, GCU's got some guys too. I mean, Zach York, that guy is just, I just look at him and I'm like, this guy rocks. Like, I love to watch this guy play. He didn't have the best opening weekend. He's hitting around 290-ish area. But, I mean, and then Connor Madison comes in out of the pen Friday against Vandy. He goes 5 scoreless relief, 6 Ks, no walks. I mean, you can't ask for anything more from a relief pitcher. No walks over 5 innings, no runs. I mean, no walks pretty much leads to no runs, in my opinion, especially in college baseball. I mean, pitchers just hurt themselves a lot more than they should. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Vandy, it's kind of been, after the Kumar lighter era of Vandy baseball, kind of those guys came and went. They've kind of struggled finding the guy, Friday, Saturday, like those guys that you need in SEC play to get you through. It's been a lot of, here's some, like they had Grayson Carter, who was throwing 107 miles an hour, but how was he at, consistently putting together strong outings, getting, deep outings. You couldn't sometimes use him as starter, sometimes out of the bullpen. So they've had a lot of guys with warts. And I think maybe they've kind of figured some of that out. They have a few more guys that they can rely on, like you said, Sawyer Hawks, and I think something big for them would be Ethan McElvain, who came in as a big time freshman name. Really good stuff. It's wild. It is. There's not a lot of control there. He only got 8 outs over the weekend. Granted, 7 of them were strikeouts, but when you're falling behind, even if you have good stuff and they know something's coming, in the zone, it's easier to piece it up. So, I mean, he gave up 6 hits and 3 of them were doubles, walked 4. You see flashes with the 7 Ks, and then you see the command come and bite him in the end. And he just, 8 outs is just not good enough from a starter. It's not at Vanderbilt. That's not the standard. So I'm sure that they're going to get in the lab with him, and it's a first start of the year, and we'll see what him and Vanderbilt can do. Going down the rest of the year.
Yeah, they had 2 big wins in this midweek too against. I mean, Air Force is always just kind of be. I mean, it's our troops, man. They're always going to be gritty. They're always going to. They had a cool ass Air Force parachute down onto the field before the game. Like, that's the most America thing, other than Donald Trump leading the Daytona 500 in his bulletproof car. I mean, I think that's the 2 most American things I've seen in a while there. Love that. But Ryan Prager this weekend, 5 scoreless. I mean, Elon's not going to be a perennial powerhouse by any means. Elon had that game. They did. It was 2-0 in the 6th, and then bullpen proceeds to throw 8 straight balls. You had the ball 9, ball 10 chant rolling. You walk in 2 runs with the bases loaded, throwing 8 straight, and then next batter you throw a wild pitch, allows a third, you take a 3-2 lead, and A&M doesn't really look back in that situation there. But I mean, you can't have that happen especially when you're on the road, an SEC team on a Friday night. But yeah, I mean, A&M wins all 3 this weekend. Number 1 team in the country. I mean, I think that's a good program. I mean, Laviolette, that guy's nuts. I mean, you got that whole lineup can mash. You got guys throwing flames out of the pen. I mean, I think A&M is going to be an Omaha team by the end of it. Had some questions opening weekend, obviously. But, I mean, they're going to find a way to put that all together.
Yeah, I mean, hey, when you got a team like that on the ropes, you got to throw a knockout punch, and Elon didn't. And usually talent's going to win out in the end, and that's what happened. Laviolette, 3 hits, 3 of them were homers. I mean, it's a pretty swing. It's an easy swing. Walked 4 times, only struck out 3. That was kind of his big bugaboo last year, was just the strikeout totals were high. So if he can kind of curb that a little bit, he's gonna go crazy for them. But I mean, they've got guys up and down the lineup, and that's why you bring Michael Early back, so you can keep all those guys. Those were his guys. I mean, he's a guy running that offense, and they all wanted him back. Hayden Schott tweeting about him on Twitter that's who they wanted. So good on A&M for giving a guy a shot there, and I think that these guys are going to end up paying that decision off for A&M in the long run. And yeah, I mean, having Prager back is huge. Just having a guy that's consistent, that you know what he's going to give you every single Friday is big. It's big. It lets you settle into the weekend. Guys pitched, in and out of SEC weekends. He's pitched in Omaha. He pitched in a final. So having Prager back is huge, and that offense is going to do plenty this year for A&M.
You got the Round Rock Classic this weekend, Gavin. You got Oregon State, Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Virginia playing in a nice little round robin in Round Rock, Texas. Now, I love Oklahoma, man. That's my sleeper team. That starting rotation is unbelievable. And it all really comes together. I mean, Kyson Witherspoon, that his stuff's electric. He was up to 98, 99 this weekend. His brother was also up to 98, 99, the Saturday guy. And then you got a big transfer coming in, pitching for you on Sundays, and he showed up to play this past weekend. So I mean, I think Oklahoma is going to have they have the weekend staff to win any weekend series in SEC play, in my opinion. And I mean, we haven't really seen much on Oregon State, but I mean that's a good program. They're going to compete. Virginia, I think they're going to have a nice little bounce back weekend. Minnesota, don't really know much on Minnesota, not too much, but I mean I think that's a good field.
Yeah, I mean, I like the big tournaments at the beginning of the year. You kind of get some teams that play each other that normally wouldn't play each other, except maybe if they're matched up in the postseason, and you got another one of those here. You like to see good teams compete. Maybe helps some teams see where they are deficient, or maybe a little better than they thought earlier than other teams that are just kind of getting into it, playing some lesser competition. But the biggest issue I've got with these tournaments, man, is this paywall that you've got to buy to watch these things. I mean, you're spending $15-$20 to watch a weekend of games, and then you're never going to use it again. It's never been my favorite thing in the world, but I guess we can't necessarily control it. If that's what they're going to do. I mean, I guess, I wouldn't say the biggest way to grow the game is to put stuff behind paywalls, but what do I know, right? But yeah, I mean, Oregon State is an exciting one for me. I mean, Trent Caraway, superstar. Arquette at short, superstar. He hits the cover off the ball. Both of those do. Big, high-energy players. Dax Whitney is absolute electricity as well. The big 6'5" freshman. I think he was everything that we thought he was going to be. Very poised. It's 98 miles an hour, rare bag. Here it is. A little bit of feel for off-speed stuff as well. And, Oregon State's going to be well coached, and they play the game the right way. Yeah, I think for Oregon State, it's just going to be, up and down the lineup. How consistent is the rest of the guys? They've got the stars at the top, but Gavin Turley, Jacob Craig, they're going to need some of those other guys to step up big time, behind Caraway and Arquette there for Oregon State. But yeah, I mean, hey, it's a loaded field. Virginia's going to get another crack at it. They're going to Puerto Rico, and then this one's where in Texas.
Yeah.
So they're going everywhere. They might not even go back to Virginia there. So
they probably didn't.
They're getting road tested early, so that'll be good for Brian O'Connor and his club. When it gets to the postseason, which they're there every year, so that's nothing new. But yeah, no, I like the field that they've put together in these things.
We got two weekend series that I'm really kind of looking forward to, other than these little round robin tournaments that we got. We got UNC versus ECU and Lafayette, Louisiana versus Nebraska. What do we got in Lafayette, Nebraska?
Probably the tale of two weekends. I think Nebraska had a really good weekend up there, starting the season top 25 ranked, and they go out and they played well this past weekend. On the flip side, the Cajuns did not have a great weekend. Chase Morgan was good, not great. Friday night, gave up a few more hits than you like to see. But I mean, he was solid, gave them a chance to stay in it, and Lafayette scored enough to get it done on Friday night, and then just that was kind of it. We saw from them the offense was kind of non-existent. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get back on track. They're going to mix things up down there. They're not just going to keep rolling out the same guys if it's not working. So they're quick to try and find a solution to some of those things. And, ECU, maybe not, you lose a game in a doubleheader, and then now you got to go play at UNC, who's rolling pretty high after they pitched it really well against Texas Tech, and then had a big win against Kansas State on the midweek too. So I think both series are going to be great, and we'll see where the chips fall at the end.
Yeah, Lafayette even yesterday, Tuesday, had a tough game against Texas Southern. I mean, you go down 11-4 in the third inning, and then you scratch and claw your way back and score 10 runs over the 7th and 8th innings, maybe 6th and 7th inning, to come back and win that game 14-11. But I mean, for what Matt Deggs wants for this Lafayette team, they're going to have to make a change somewhere, or they're going to have to do something, because I'm just not seeing it right now. And I think they could be in for a tough season if they don't turn it around quick. But I think this weekend's a really good test for them. I mean, you got a ranked Nebraska team coming in, and I think Nebraska takes the series, but I think Lafayette's going to find a way to scratch and claw and bunt the ball around the infield, find a way to win a game behind Chase Morgan, I think, on Friday night. So I think it's going to be a good series, but I think Nebraska takes it.
Yeah. Hey, it doesn't get easier for Lafayette. That's why you'd like to see them win a couple more games against a team that was projected to come in last in their conference. And I know preseason projections or whatever, but you'd like at least a better showing. But they got DBU coming up after Nebraska and Troy. So that's three of your next weekends coming up. So it's not going to be easy for the Cajuns. It's not a necessarily great start for them, but yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's hard to sweep teams, so I think Lafayette gets one, but Nebraska's coming in high off a big weekend, and I think they probably get the series win.
Yeah, and all in all, I mean, it was a great week in college baseball. I mean, it's back. Like, there's games everywhere. I mean, you got Marshall playing on the road at Hawaii. That first pitch on the East Coast is 11:59 p.m. I mean, there's nothing better than laying down, put your head on the pillow, and you're watching some Rainbow Warriors. That's a gritty team. I mean, you sweep Marshall in the weekend series, and then, I mean, there's nothing better. It's on 1:30 in the morning. Saturday morning at 1:30, and you're just watching Hawaii and Marshall play. I mean, that's what college baseball is all about. You're not getting that in Major League Baseball, not at all. But you got anything to add, Callaway?
No, I mean, hey, it's been awesome to get it back rolling, just to hear the glove pop again. Get out to the ballpark, breathe in the hot dog and the popcorn and the smelly person sitting next to you. It was a good weekend. I got out and saw future top 5 pick Jamie Arnold slinging around for the Noles. So that was good to see, and a lot of arms that they've got. It's going to be an exciting club. Coach Jarrett's got down there. So no, just getting back out to the ballpark. You got something to watch all the time now. That stretch from the Super Bowl until when college baseball starts is the roughest time, because there's not a whole lot going on for me unless you're a big hoops guy. But yeah, so being all the way back in on, I mean, what are you going to do on a random Tuesday night? Oh, guess what? Well, we've got
seven. You got 7 ranked teams and absolute barn burners.
We got Troy Auburn. We got Southern Mississippi State. We got Florida State, USF. We got UNC and Kansas State, and you can go on and on. Even some ones that were canceled. Houston was supposed to play Texas. Houston was supposed to play Oregon State. So that could have been, a couple more good games, but those got postponed due to weather, I would assume. But yeah, no, I'm glad it's back. It's the best time of the year, especially when it gets a little warmer. I don't think baseball should be played in the cold. It doesn't make sense to me. Even though the World Series runs into October, I'm not a huge fan of anything in the cold, let alone baseball. So I think college does it right with that season wrapping up there in June. But no, I'm just happy it's back and happy to have something to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys for tuning in again for our Week 1 recap and Week 2 preview, and we hope for a great week. We'll be back next week.